Welcome to Space Matrix. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more updates. The world woke up to a shock. BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa announced a sweeping 100% tariff on all U.S. imports, sending shockwaves through the global economy. This was not just a policy change, it was a bold, coordinated move that no one saw coming. No warning, no negotiation, just a sudden seismic shift that left governments, businesses, and ordinary people scrambling for answers. The announcement dominated headlines and social media as experts and citizens alike tried to grasp the implications. This was a direct challenge to American economic dominance, a shot across the bow that threatened to upend decades of established trade relationships and financial power. Wall Street panicked. The Dow plunged in its worst single-day drop ever, wiping out billions in market value within hours. Investors watched in disbelief as their portfolios shrank. Every American product bound for BRICS nations, iPhones, Fords, soybeans, instantly doubled in price, making them unaffordable for millions and grinding trade to a halt. U.S. companies lost access to massive markets overnight, forcing factories to shut down and leaving workers uncertain about their future. The move was designed for maximum pain, targeting the heart of American industry and threatening the livelihoods of millions of American families. The White House was silent, markets in chaos, and leaders behind closed doors searching for a response as the world watched. For the first time in decades, America faced an economic attack it couldn't easily counter, with its usual tools rendered powerless by the scale and unity of the BRICS action. The era of uncontested U.S. economic supremacy was over. The world's balance of power had shifted in an instant. The world held its breath, waiting for America's next move. Allies and rivals alike wondered how the superpower would respond to this unprecedented challenge. But this time, there was no obvious answer. The usual playbook no longer applied, and uncertainty reigned. The global order had changed in a single morning, leaving a sense of instability in a future that suddenly seemed unpredictable. The question, could America adapt, or would it crumble under the weight of this new economic reality? The world was watching, and the stakes had never been higher. BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa started as just a catchy label for a group of fast-growing economies. But over the years it evolved into something much more significant, a powerful alliance with global ambitions. What began as economic cooperation soon transformed into a united front, as these countries realized their combined influence could reshape the world order. Despite being rivals in some areas, they shared a common frustration, a global system that seemed rigged in favor of the United States and Western powers. The dominance of the US dollar allowed America to print money freely and impose sanctions on other nations at will. BRICS members wanted to break free from this financial stranglehold. So, they built their own bank, created a financial safety net, and began inviting new members like Saudi Arabia and Iran, expanding their reach and influence. Together, they now control vast reserves of energy, massive manufacturing capacity, and a huge share of the world's population, giving them unprecedented leverage. Years of quiet cooperation and strategic planning led to this moment, a united front, ready to challenge US dominance on the world stage. The announcement of a 100% tariff wasn't just a bluff, it was a calculated, bold move designed to send shockwaves through the global economy. BRICS leaders believed that America's growing political chaos and mounting debt made it more vulnerable than ever before. They gambled that their combined economic and political strength could withstand the shock better than the US could, betting on their resilience and unity. This was no longer just a club of emerging markets, it had become a force capable of influencing global finance, trade, and diplomacy. BRICS was now a new center of global power, ready to challenge the old order and offer an alternative vision for the future. The world was no longer dominated by a single superpower. With BRICS rising, the global landscape had truly become multipolar. A 100% tariff isn't just a policy, it's a blockade, a wall thrown up overnight between trading partners. It's not about negotiation or leverage. It's about shutting the door, locking it, and throwing away the key. When a tariff doubles the price of a product, it's not a tax. It's a message, you're not welcome here. Imagine a Chinese company eyeing a $1 million US machine. Suddenly, with the tariff, that same machine now costs $2 million. The price tag isn't just higher, it's out of reach. No rational business would pay double, not when alternatives exist, or when local industries can step in to fill the gap. American goods, planes, soybeans, software, were instantly priced out of BRICS markets. These weren't just luxury items, they were the backbone of US exports, now rendered unaffordable and unwanted almost overnight. Hundreds of billions in US exports vanished overnight. Warehouses that once bustled with activity fell silent, and shipping lanes that connected continents suddenly emptied. This wasn't about making US goods less competitive, it was about making them untouchable. Products that once symbolized American innovation now sat gathering dust, locked away from the world. The goal was clear: sever economic ties, force both sides to find new partners, and make old relationships obsolete. It was a deliberate, calculated move to redraw the map of global trade. BRICS signaled they were ready for the pain, willing to rebuild supply chains and endure short-term losses. Factories adapted, leaders strategized, and new routes were mapped out, all in the name of economic independence. For the US, the loss was immediate and total. Export offices shuttered, goods returned, and the once mighty flow of American products came to a standstill. The tariff was a weapon, not a bargaining chip. It was wielded with intent, to inflict maximum damage, to force a reckoning, and to change the balance of power. It was a bet that BRICS could survive the fallout, and that America, so dependent on global markets, could not. The world watched as the stakes rose higher. The world watched as the US export machine ground to a halt. Newsrooms buzzed, analysts debated, and factories across America stood idle, waiting for a solution that might never come. The message was clear: the old rules no longer applied. The global order was shifting and everyone had to adapt or be left behind. This was economic war, and the first battle was already lost. The front lines weren't trenches, but boardrooms and shipping lanes where every decision carried global consequences. America's global reach had been amputated in a single stroke. The world's economic map was being redrawn, and the US found itself on the outside looking in. The fallout hit American workers first. Iowa farmers lost their biggest customer, China, overnight. Soybean prices collapsed. Lumber mills, chemical plants, and manufacturers across the country shut down or laid off thousands. Boeing's order book from China evaporated. Over 3 million export-related jobs were at risk within weeks. The ripple effects devastated entire communities: truckers, diners, local governments. These were high-skill, middle-class jobs, the backbone of America. The promise of globalization turned into a nightmare. Decades of outsourcing left US supply chains hollow. America realized too late, the world didn't have to buy what it sold. The silence in shuttered factories echoed a new reality. The US struck back with its own tariffs, but the pain boomeranged home. America depended on BRICS for everything from electronics to medicine. Prices doubled overnight: phones, drugs, even t-shirts. Inflation wasn't a statistic, it was a daily crisis. Families on fixed incomes suffered most as paychecks shrank in value. Protests erupted as the cost of living soared. The Federal Reserve was trapped to raise rates and deepen the recession, or let inflation run wild. Stagflation, rising prices, and joblessness returned with a vengeance. The American middle class was squeezed from both sides. The social fabric began to fray. The economic pain was everywhere, and there was no easy fix. America was caught in a vice of its own making. The dollar's power came from being the world's reserve currency. BRICS shattered that by ditching the dollar for their own trade. China and others dumped US Treasury bonds, flooding the market. The dollar's value plunged. Imports became unaffordable. US borrowing costs soared as foreign buyers vanished. The government faced a brutal choice: cut spending or print more money and fuel inflation. The exorbitant privilege was gone. America could no longer live on borrowed time and borrowed money. The psychological blow was immense. The US was no longer the world's financial anchor. The king was dethroned. America was just another debtor nation, forced to face its own limits. The end of dollar dominance meant the end of easy prosperity. The world's safety net was gone. The US had to confront reality, fast. The BRICS tariff marked the end of America's economic empire. No invasion, no bombs, just the collapse of the system that made the US rich. The world didn't destroy America, it simply moved on. The US now faced a future of hardship and reinvention. It had to rebuild its industry, fix its politics, and live within its means. The American standard of living, once propped up by global privilege, would fall. There was hope. A weaker dollar could make US exports competitive again, but recovery would take years, maybe a generation. America would be poorer but perhaps more resilient. The American century was over. A multipolar world had arrived. The US was now just one nation among many. The shock was a wake-up call. Nothing lasts forever. The challenge: build a new future, not on privilege, but on real production.